I'm Lauren Davis, 32 years old, and supposedly living the dream. My tech company is now valued at over $200 million. Yet there I stood, staring at my name card, placed at the father's table, at my sister Grace's wedding reception. After 5 years of almost no contact, this seating arrangement felt like an afterthought. "Wait, are you Lauren Davis, that tech millionaire?" her fiancé Brandon asked, as I quietly took my seat. My sister and our parents looked pale as he lit up with excitement. This was it, a moment to reflect on what this family truly meant to me. Before I go on, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever felt invisible. To the people who were supposed to care most. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, Grace and I were just 2 years apart. I still remember the yellow bedroom we shared, with butterfly stickers on the ceiling and a bookshelf dividing our sides. Grace, the younger one, would crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, and I'd calm her with stories about princesses who saved themselves. We were inseparable, sharing toys, clothes, and secrets. Our parents, Diana and Robert Davis, ran a successful local insurance business. Dad worked long hours while Mom managed our social calendar, making sure we looked like the ideal family. To their country club circle. Early on, it became clear Grace had the traits our parents valued: traditional beauty, charm, and a constant desire to please. With her blonde curls, blue eyes, and outgoing nature, she embodied their vision of the perfect daughter. I was different, quieter, more logical, with dark brown hair and a love for books instead of parties. By middle school, our differences were clear. Grace became a cheerleader and made friends easily. I preferred the computer lab where I built websites and coded basic games. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the constant background to my teenage years. When Grace was crowned homecoming queen, our parents threw her a party. When I won the state science competition, they simply nodded and asked if I'd thought about playing a sport. High school only made the gap wider. Grace dated the football captain and was voted prom queen. I led the computer club and spent weekends creating my first app. They attended all her cheer competitions but missed the tech fair, where I showcased software that impressed an MIT recruiter. When our college acceptance letters arrived, I had a full scholarship to MIT for computer science. But instead of celebrating, my mom sighed, "Boston's so far. At least Grace will be close at Portland State." On the day I left for college, my dad said, "Don't get too caught up in that computer stuff. You'll still need to find a good husband." At MIT, I finally found my place. Surrounded by people who shared my passion, I felt understood. But being one of the few women in my program came with challenges. Male classmates often assumed I needed help. Professors sometimes overlooked me, in favor of the men beside me. But I pushed through, graduated with honors, and received several job offers. Instead of joining a big company, I took a risk. In a tiny apartment, I created security software to tackle a new kind of cyber threat. I worked 18-hour days, surviving on instant noodles and coffee, and developed what would become Secure Sync, a program that changed data security. My big break came when a major bank, after a serious hack, took a chance on my software. It succeeded. Where larger firms had failed, within months more financial institutions signed on. Over the next 5 years, my one-person operation grew into a team of 45. We secured funding, moved into a sleek San Francisco office, and the company valuation soared past $200 million. Industry magazines called me a rising tech star. I upgraded to a condo overlooking the bay. Through all of this, my family kept their distance. Holiday calls were brief. When I shared my achievements, my father would reply with, "That's nice, honey. Did you hear Grace got promoted to head nurse?" My mom still described my job as playing with computers, even after Forbes named me an innovator. The last time I visited home was 5 years ago, after landing a major contract. I had hoped for a celebration. Instead, it turned into an argument. My mother criticized my unfeminine career path and wondered when I'd settle down like Grace. When I defended myself, my father accused me of thinking I was better than the rest of them. I left early and hadn't returned since. Our contact dwindled to holiday messages and occasional comments online. That's why I was surprised when a thick cream envelope arrived at my office. Inside was a formal invitation to Grace's wedding to Brandon Harris, the son of a well-known local businessman. A handwritten note from Grace read, "Hope you can come. It would mean a lot, despite everything." I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they finally saw my worth. Maybe this wedding was a chance to start over. I checked my schedule with my assistant, RSVP'd yes, and blocked off the weekend. I splurged on the perfect outfit, a classic emerald silk dress from a designer shop, and chose a wedding gift. Handcrafted baccarat crystal worth $15,000. Maybe it was over the top, but I wanted them to see I had succeeded, even without their encouragement. As my private flight approached Portland, I looked out at the familiar Pacific Northwest landscape, allowing myself to imagine a warm return. Would they finally accept me for who I was? The flight attendant's voice brought me back as we began our descent. Outside the window, the green hills of Oregon came into view, so unlike San Francisco's city sprawl. At the airport, a driver waited holding a sign that read Ms. Davis in sharp black print. "Where to, Ms. Davis?" he asked, taking my weekend bag. "The Nines Hotel, downtown," I replied. I'd decided not to stay at my parents' house. Setting that boundary felt necessary for my own peace of mind. As we drove, I pointed out places from my childhood: the library where I spent weekends, the ice cream shop where Grace and I celebrated, good grades, the park where we chased each other around the jungle gym. These places hadn't changed, even though everything else had. At the hotel, I placed my dress in the closet and set the carefully wrapped gift on the desk. My phone buzzed with a message from Grace. "Glad you made it. Super busy with prep. See you at the house." Tomorrow. That one-word reply carried more weight than expected. 5 years apart, and that was all Grace had to say. I responded with a simple, "Looking forward to it," then stayed in that night and ordered room service. Instead of going out, I rehearsed calm answers to possible comments about my career, appearance, relationship status. Sleep came in restless stretches. The next morning, I took extra care getting ready for the pre-wedding family gathering. My hair fell into soft waves, and I kept my makeup subtle but polished. I chose a navy sundress, elegant, understated. After one last look in the mirror, I grabbed the small bag holding thoughtful gifts for my parents and Grace, then called for a car. The house looked exactly as I remembered, classic colonial with white trim and my mother's perfectly kept garden framing. The porch. Several cars were already parked as I pulled up. I paused, took a deep breath and walked to the door, feeling more like a guest than family. My mother opened the door. Her expression went blank for a moment before recognition dawned. "Elena, you're here." Her hug was brief, stiff. "Come in, everyone's out back." She looked me over, eyes narrowing. "You look well. Have you lost weight? Your face looks thinner." Before I could answer, she added, "Grace is with her bridesmaids. They've been so helpful with everything." Walking through the house felt like touring a life I no longer belonged to. The walls were lined with updated family photos, Grace's, nursing graduation, vacations, holidays. Not one included me. It was like I'd been intentionally cropped out of the family's history. In the backyard, relatives clustered in small groups. My father was at the grill, beer in hand, laughing with his brothers. He gave me a nod, but didn't leave his conversation right away. Eventually, he made his way over. "There she is," he said, patting my shoulder. "The San Francisco big shot. How's that computer thing going?" "It's going well, Dad. We just closed our Series C funding round." His eyes glazed over. That right, good for you. Say, you met Brandon's dad yet? He's in real estate. Real buildings, you. No. He laughed at his own joke. That was the tone for the rest of the day. Light chatter, shallow questions, barely waiting for answers. One aunt commented on my empty ring finger. Still focused on career, I see. A cousin introduced me to his wife with, "This is Elena. She does something with computers in California." Grace stayed surrounded by a tight circle of bridesmaids. 8. Women in matching bride squad shirts, all laughter and inside jokes. When we finally spoke, her hug was brief, her attention divided. "You look amazing," I said sincerely. She really did glow. "Thanks. It's been crazy busy. Mom's been such a lifesaver with the planning." She introduced me to a few bridesmaids, names I instantly forgot. None were familiar from our childhood. "You remember Lisa from nursing, school, and Kimberly from the hospital?" She didn't wait for my answer. "Oh, I think Mom needs me." She was gone before I could say more. I stood near a conversation I wasn't part of. Then Brandon, Grace's fiancé, approached. He was tall, sandy-haired, and confident. "You must be Elena. Grace said you'd be coming in from California." "San Francisco," I replied. "Congratulations on the wedding." "Thanks. What do you do out there? Sales, right?" I opened, my mouth to clarify, but my mother's voice interrupted. "Group photo! Immediate family only!" She motioned to Grace, my father, Brandon, and herself. I stepped forward. "Oh, and we need someone to take the picture," she added. "Elena, would you mind?" The sting hit immediately. I said nothing, just took the camera and snapped several shots of their perfect family moment, feeling completely outside it. I handed the camera back and made an excuse to head toward the drink table. There, I overheard my mother speaking to an elderly relative. "Elena's always been difficult, so independent, you know. Grace is our easy one, always thinking about family first." Her words hit like a punch. I set my untouched drink down and pulled out my phone, texting my friend Rachel back in San Francisco. "Remind me why I came." Her reply was instant. "Because you're stronger than they know. Text me updates. I've got an extraction plan ready." The gathering dragged on another hour before I claimed an early flight as an excuse to leave. No one protested. No one asked me to stay. In the Uber back to my hotel, I finally let the tears come. The driver pretended not to notice, turning up the radio to give me space. Back in the hotel room, I kicked off my shoes and called Rachel. "That bad?" she asked. "Worse," I said. "It's like I don't exist, except when I'm inconvenient. I'm not even in the family photos." "Their loss," Rachel said firmly. "You're the woman who built something incredible, out of nothing, who never backed down." After we hung up, I ordered a glass of wine from room service and stood by the window, looking out at the Portland skyline. Tomorrow would be the rehearsal dinner, then the wedding. I made a quiet promise to myself. I would make it through the weekend with dignity, not for them, but for me. The rehearsal dinner was at Riverside, one of Portland's most exclusive restaurants. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Willamette River, and crystal chandeliers lit tables draped in white. Linen. I arrived precisely on time, wearing a burgundy cocktail dress that had once earned compliments from a Vogue fashion editor at a charity event. The hostess checked her list. "Mitchell Party. Ah, yes. You're at table 7. She led me through the main dining area, past tables 1 through 6, each already filling with family and close friends, to a small table near the kitchen. Table 7. The name cards read, "Mitchell Extended Family, distant elderly relatives I barely remembered, 2 second cousins and their spouses, and me." "Can I get you something from the bar?" the hostess asked, noticing my face. "Scotch. Neat. Make it a double," I replied, setting my clutch on the table. From this spot I could see the head table where Grace sat with her 8 bridesmaids. Not one seat had been saved for her only sister. The women looked like slightly varied versions of Grace, blonde, cheerful, pastel-clad. They snapped selfies, laughing while comparing the matching bracelets Grace had given them. I didn't recognize any of the women, not from our childhood, and not even from Grace's social media. Brandon's family had clearly taken over the central tables. His parents, James and Elizabeth Harris, were in their element among Portland's business crowd. James had built a fortune in commercial real estate and, judging by the murmurs around me, had financed most of this extravagant wedding weekend. Aunt Dorothy sat down beside me, peering at me through thick glasses. "Elena, is that you?" "You've grown up," she said, patting my hand. "Still single, dear? Working all the time, I hear. Such a shame. A pretty girl like you should have a family by now." I sipped my scotch, which had arrived quickly. "Actually, I'm very happy with my life, Aunt Dorothy." She looked unconvinced. "If you say so, your sister's done so well, hasn't she? Such a lovely fiancé. Comes from a good family. Your parents must be over the moon." Across the room, I spotted my mother, deep in conversation with Elizabeth Harris. "Grace has always been nurturing," she was saying. "Even as a little girl, she cared for her dolls like they were real babies. Nursing was perfect for her. She's always thought of others first. Not once did she mention me. Not when guests asked about her children, not in passing." Later, during the cocktail hour, James Harris approached, holding a glass of champagne. "You're Grace's sister, right? From California?" "Yes, San Francisco. I run a tech company," I replied. "Oh, is that so? Social media, websites. My secretary's son does something with computers too. Cybersecurity, actually. We develop enterprise-level systems for banks and government agencies." His expression faded into polite boredom. "Interesting hobby. So what's your actual job?" Before I could reply, someone called him over. I ordered another scotch. Eventually, Grace came over to my table, looking stunning in a white cocktail dress with bride spelled in rhinestones on the shoulder. "You made it," she said, giving me a hug that barely made contact. "Of course, everything looks beautiful." She looked around, distracted. "Thanks. It's been so stressful. Mom's been incredible, though." "I noticed I'm not sitting with the family," I said carefully, trying not to sound accusatory. She looked momentarily uncomfortable. "Oh, that. Seating was tricky with Brandon's big family. If you wanted to be a bridesmaid, you should have told me." "You never asked," I said softly. "Well, it's all finalized now." "Oh, Brandon's grandmother just arrived. I should go say hi." She squeezed my arm. "Thanks for being here, sis." As she walked away, someone else stepped beside me. Brandon's best man, Tyler, leaned against a pillar. "So you're the mystery sister?" he said, half mocking. "Grace mentioned you're from California. Teaching or something?" "I run a cybersecurity company," I clarified. Cool, like an Etsy shop?" His smirk told me he wasn't really listening. "Something like that," I said, not wasting more breath. Dinner began with my father standing to make the first toast. "To my perfect daughter," he began, beaming at Grace. "She's brought us nothing but joy since the day she was born. And to Brandon, the son we always wanted. We couldn't be prouder of the life you two are building." There was no mention of a second daughter. No recognition. Not even a polite nod. Each speech followed the same script. Grace adored Brandon. Celebrated, I remained unseen at table 7, increasingly aware of how little I mattered to them. As dessert arrived, an older woman sat beside me. I recognized Elaine Peterson, my mother's college friend who had always shown me unexpected kindness. "I've been following your work, Elena," she said warmly. "That Forbes piece was incredible. Your parents never mention it, you know." "I'm not surprised," I said, pushing my untouched cake away. "They've always been a little intimidated by you," she said, lowering her voice. "You're brilliant driven. Grace is easier for them. She fits into the mold. You've always challenged them just by being yourself." "That's a generous take." Elaine smiled gently. "I've known your parents for 30 years. Trust me, They've built this story where Grace is the successful one because they understand her world. Yours, they can't even begin to grasp. Her words lingered as the evening wound down. Back in my hotel room, I considered booking an earlier flight home. Why stay? To prove something? To be noticed? My phone buzzed with a message from Samantha, my business partner. "How's the family circus? Need a fake emergency call?" I smiled in spite of myself. "Tempting," I texted back. "We'll debrief tomorrow." After a long shower, I made a quiet decision. I would stay, not for them, but for myself. I'd wasted too much time seeking approval from people who had no intention of giving it. This weekend would be the period at the end of that story. Afterward, I'd start something new, on my terms. Morning sunlight filtered through the hotel curtains. It was the day of Grace's wedding. I lay still for a moment, bracing myself for another round of subtle exclusion and emotional balancing. A message popped up on my phone. Samantha again. "Big day. Remember, you're Eleanor Mitchell, Forbes 30 under 30 cybersecurity pioneer. Not the Elena who needs her family's validation. Call if you need a reminder." Her words gave me the strength I needed. I sent back a quick thanks and began my routine. As I applied my makeup, I checked Instagram. The bridesmaids had already posted dozens of photos from my parents' house. Matching robes, champagne flutes raised, perfectly posed group shots. Bride's quad. Grace's big day. Best friends forever. I hadn't been invited to join them. Not even for the morning rituals. The realization sank like a stone. Not only had I been excluded from the bridal party, but from the experience of sisterhood altogether. A knock at the door broke my thoughts. A hotel staffer stood with a large arrangement of white orchids. For a moment, my heart lifted. Maybe my family had thought of me after all. But the card, a small white card tucked into the bouquet, simply read, "Knock 'em dead, boss. We're all rooting for you. Your secure sync team." My eyes welled up unexpectedly. It was my team, my chosen family over the last 5 years, who had remembered to support me from afar. Meanwhile, my own mother hadn't even texted to see if I was awake or needed anything for the day. Almost as if on cue, my phone rang. Her name lit up on the screen. "Elena, are you up? The ceremony starts at 3, but family photos are at the church by 1. "Good morning to you too, Mom. Yes, I'm awake. You're making an effort with your appearance, right? These are permanent photos. I've arranged for you to use the church's cry room to change if needed." Her voice had that familiar edge of criticism. "My hotel room is fine, thanks. And yes, I'll look appropriate." I held back from mentioning that last year my appearance had been featured in Vanity Fair. "Good. Please don't be late. Grace is very stressed, and we don't need complications." After she hung up, I finished getting ready, paying close attention to every detail. My emerald green silk dress was graceful, eye-catching but not showy. I wasn't there to outshine the bride, but I wouldn't shrink myself either. My 4-carat diamond earrings, a gift to myself after landing our biggest contract, would serve as a quiet reminder of what I had achieved. I arrived at my parents' house at 11:30. Cars lined the street and music and laughter spilled from inside. The front door was unlocked, so I walked in without knocking. The living room had been turned into a bridal preparation hub. Hairstylists, makeup artists and photographers moved around the bridesmaids, now in coordinated lavender gowns. Grace sat in the center, mimosa in hand, radiant in a silk robe with bride stitched across the back. No one noticed me at first. I stood silently by the doorway, holding a small gift bag. After a few minutes, my mother appeared from the kitchen. She stopped abruptly. "Elena, you're early." She looked over my already done hair and makeup. "We have professionals here if you need touch-ups." "I'm good, thanks. I brought something for Grace," I said, holding up the bag with The vintage sapphire hairpin I'd found in a San Francisco antique shop, a nod to the tradition of something blue. "She's very busy right now with photos. Just leave it on the side table," she said, waving vaguely before turning back to the photographer. "Let's get some shots of Grace and the bridesmaids on the staircase." I placed the gift gently on the table and found an empty corner to watch from. It felt like watching a well-rehearsed play where everyone had a role, except me. My father passed through briefly, half-dressed in tuxedo pants and an undershirt. He grabbed a bottle of water and nodded at me before disappearing into his study. The bridesmaids hovered protectively around Grace, touching up her lipstick, adjusting her curls, topping off her mimosa. Their laughter bounced around the room as they swapped stories, none of which included me. "Remember Cabo last year?" one of them said, followed by giggles. "Last year, when I had sent Grace a birthday text and got a 2-word reply 2 days later. Soon, my mother called for a pre-ceremony prayer. 'Everyone gather, please.' The bridal party moved into a circle at the center of the room. I stepped forward to join, but the circle closed before I could. Hands linked, heads bowed, I remained outside. The prayer ended with, 'Thank you for bringing Brandon into our family and for Grace and Brandon's beautiful future together.' Then my mother added, 'We're especially thankful for everyone who made the effort to be here for Grace's special day.'" As the group broke apart, Grace finally noticed me. "Elena, when did you get here?" "About 20 minutes ago." I gave her a light hug. "You look beautiful." "Thanks," she said, scanning the room. "It's been chaos." "Did Mom tell you about the photo schedule?" "She just said to be at the church by 1. Grace nodded, then hesitated. "Can I ask you something? It's a little awkward." She bit her lip. "Brandon and I want to upgrade our honeymoon, but with the wedding costs, I know your company's doing really well. The request hit me like a slap. After 5 years of minimal contact, being left out of the bridal party and the morning's rituals, this was the first personal conversation we'd had, and it was about money. What did you have in mind?" I asked, keeping my tone steady. "We were hoping to extend the trip to 2 weeks, maybe add Bora Bora, probably around $30,000. She looked at me with hopeful eyes, as if the ask was natural. "I'll transfer it this afternoon," I heard myself say, wondering why I still believed approval could be bought. "You're the best," she said, hugging me briefly. "I should get back. We have this whole photo plan before heading to the church." I watched her rejoin her bridesmaids, the scene playing out like a memory I didn't belong to. I recalled the 2 of us playing wedding in our backyard as kids. I was 7, she was 5. We'd taken turns being the bride, using a white sheet as a veil. "When I get married for real," little Grace had said, "you'll be next to me all day." 25 years later, I couldn't have been more removed. I arrived early at the church, hoping I might help. The colonial-style building was adorned with lavender and white flowers, ribbons lining each pew. A woman with a clipboard stopped me in the foyer. "Bride or groom side?" "Bride, I'm her sister." She scanned her list. "Mitchell." "Oh, family. The family room is down the hall to the right, but they're still doing bridesmaid photos there." "Is there anything I can help with?" I offered. She gave a polite smile. "No, thank you. The wedding planner has a 6-person team managing everything." With nothing to do, I wandered into the church library. It was quiet, lined with old hymnals and religious texts. I pulled out my phone. Work messages greeted me like old friends, a security issue in London, a potential new client in Singapore, a product launch question. These things I could handle. These connections made sense. For 45 minutes, I stayed immersed in work until the coordinator returned. "We're seating family now, if you'd like to follow me." I slipped my phone into my purse and stood, ready for the next part of the day I wasn't sure I belonged to. I entered the sanctuary expecting to be seated with immediate family, up front, close to the action. But the usher led me to the 8th row. "This section is for immediate family," I said, a little confused. She glanced at her clipboard. "I have you listed in row 8. The first 4 rows are for parents, grandparents, and Brandon's extended family. Rows 5 to 7 are for the bridal party's families. So even in seating, I ranked below the families of Grace's friends. I made my way to row 8 and sat down, quietly watching as others were ushered to better seats. My parents entered and were led straight to the front without so much as a glance in my direction. The church filled quickly, a buzz of energy growing as the string quartet played a selection of classical pieces. Then the music changed. The wedding march began. Everyone rose. At the back of the church, my father appeared with Grace on his arm. Her gown flowed behind her, the veil delicately framing her smiling face. For a moment, all the distance and resentment faded. I remembered the little sister who used to crawl into bed with me during thunderstorms. She looked happy, and despite everything, that mattered. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Brandon's voice caught with emotion as he said, "His vows." Grace beamed the entire time. When they were pronounced husband and wife, the room filled with applause. I clapped too, genuinely, even as a dull ache settled in my chest. As people filtered out of the church toward the reception, I glanced at the wedding program I'd been handed on the way in. A full page was dedicated to thanking the wedding party, parents, grandparents, even the family dog, for their love and support. My name appeared nowhere. The reception was held at an elegant country club overlooking the Columbia River. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the view, and crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables covered in white linens. Arrangements of white roses and lavender hydrangeas decorated every corner, flickering candles in silver holders adding to the ambience. A string quartet played softly in the background as waiters moved smoothly through the crowd with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I paused at the entrance, taking in the room. It was packed, at least 200 guests, many of whom I recognized from childhood, now older and more polished. My father's business colleagues stood chatting near the bar. My mother's garden club friends gathered near the windows, admiring the scenery. Everyone seemed to have a place, except me. The seating chart was displayed on a large mirror near the entrance. I waited for the crowd to thin before walking up. My eyes scanned the list: Mitchell, Diana, and Robert, table 1. Mitchell, Grace, and Brandon, also table 1. I continued down the list. Finally, I found my name: Mitchell, Elena, table 19. Following the numbered tables, I walked past the dance floor, past the central tables filled with extended family, friends, and college classmates, until I reached my assigned table, tucked into a back corner near the kitchen, partially hidden behind a decorative pillar. Seated at table 19 were Aunt Dorothy from the rehearsal dinner, her hard-of-hearing husband, Uncle Walter, 2 elderly distant cousins I barely remembered, and 3 singles around my age, former classmates. Of Grace, who'd only been invited because she felt guilty, the view of the head table was almost completely blocked. "Quite the party," Uncle Walter nearly shouted, his hearing aid squealing faintly. "Reminds me of my cousin Mabel's wedding in '62, though that was in a VFW hall." I nodded politely and accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server. The distance from the center of the celebration felt intentional, a clear signal of my standing in the family. Dinner was served with precision: salad, soup, a palate cleanser, then the entree. I made small talk, giving brief answers about my job and life in San Francisco. No one seemed particularly interested in tech or startups, so I asked about their lives instead. It was easier that way. As plates were being cleared, I noticed movement. Brandon, the groom, was weaving his way across the room, stopping at various tables to greet guests. When he finally reached ours, he looked slightly flushed from champagne, but genuinely upbeat. "Didn't want to miss anyone," he said, shaking Uncle Walter's hand and offering polite hellos around the table. When he got to me, he extended his hand with a warm smile. Thanks for coming. Grace mentioned you flew in from California? San Francisco, I replied. And congratulations, it's a beautiful event. Thank you. What is it you do out there? Grace hasn't told me much about you, I'm afraid. The remark stung, but I kept my face neutral. I run a cybersecurity company called SecureSync. We design protection systems for financial institutions and government agencies. Brandon's expression changed. His brows lifted in recognition. Wait, SecureSync? The company that stopped that central bank cyber attack last year? I nodded, slightly surprised he knew. Hold on, he said, his tone shifting from polite interest to genuine enthusiasm. Are you Elena Mitchell? That Elena Mitchell, the IT entrepreneur from Forbes? The table went quiet. From the corner of my eye, I noticed my parents at the head table suddenly paying close attention. Grace was half standing, watching us with an uneasy expression. I am, I said quietly. Brandon lit up. This is incredible. We just analyzed your predictive threat algorithm in my MBA program. Your system is revolutionary. I can't believe Grace never mentioned that her sister is the Elena Mitchell. A few nearby guests turned to listen. I saw my mother whisper something urgently to my father. Grace looked unsettled. You've built one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the country, Brandon continued, clearly impressed. Didn't SecureSync just land the Federal Reserve contract? That must be huge. Hundreds of millions, right? Before I could answer, my parents and Grace arrived at the table. My mother's smile was tight and unnatural. Brandon, sweetheart, she said, placing a hand on his arm. They're just about to serve the cake. Let's go get ready for the cutting. Brandon turned to them. Did you know about Elena's company? He asked, still energized. I've been studying her business model in my entrepreneurship class. My father cleared his throat. Of course we know about Elena's computer business. Computer business? Brandon laughed. She's reshaping the entire cybersecurity field. My professor says she'll be a billionaire in 5 years if the growth continues. Grace's expression shifted. Surprise, discomfort, something else. Maybe it was dawning on her, for the first time, what had really been kept quiet. The shift from concern to calculation was so quick, I almost missed it. Grace slipped her arm through mine like we were old friends. We're so proud of Elena, she said brightly, like we'd been close all along. I can't believe she flew in just for us, with how busy she is. My mother jumped in, social instincts in full force. You must meet some of our other guests, Elena. James Harris was just asking about you. Brandon's father, who dismissed me the night before, was now approaching with a champagne flute and a new interest. Elena, I had no idea you were the founder of SecureSync. We should talk. I have some associates who would love to hear more. In minutes, my banishment to Table 19 was erased. I found myself at the center of attention, suddenly surrounded by distant relatives and old family friends who now seemed eager to shake my hand. My mother kept her arm looped through mine, walking me around the room like we were lifelong confidants. This is my daughter, Eleanor, she introduced me again and again. The entrepreneur I was just telling you about. At one point, I caught her eye. That's funny. I don't recall you ever mentioning my company before today. She laughed, as if I'd told a joke, squeezing my arm a bit too hard. When we reached the Harris family, my father joined in, laying a hand on my shoulder. Always knew she had a good business mind, he said to Brandon's father. Takes, after my side of the family. The reversal would have been laughable if it hadn't been so familiar. For years, they'd minimized everything I'd achieved. Now, with the right audience, I was the golden child, on display not for who I was, but for what I represented. Grace pulled me aside during a quiet moment. Her smile was tight. Why didn't you tell me your company had gotten that big? I knew you were doing well, but Forbes level. You never asked, I said, calmly. Honestly, she looked momentarily embarrassed before recovering. Listen, they're about to call for speeches. Would you mind saying a few words? Maybe mention Secure Sync. Brandon's family has a lot of business connections, and there it was, not pride, not curiosity, opportunity. I was being asked to pitch, to be useful. Something inside me shifted. A final thread snapped. I need to use the restroom, I said, stepping away. In the powder room, I stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me was composed, polished, and finally crystal clear. I'd become someone I was proud of, and I had done it without them, without their help, without their belief. That clarity stung, but it also set me free. They didn't see me, only what I could offer, and I no longer had any desire to play along. After a few deep breaths, I reapplied my lipstick and left the bathroom, my steps calm, my mind made up. Brandon's father was waiting with 2 other men. Elena, perfect. I was just telling Howard and Richard about your work. Howard's firm handles several pension funds. They'd love to hear about your security solutions. I smiled politely. If they'd like more information, they can reach out to our business development team through our website. We have a standard vetting process for all inquiries. He blinked, taken slightly aback by the professional distance in my response. Before he could reply, my mother appeared. There you are. Elizabeth's brother is a venture capitalist, and he's very interested in talking to you. Mom, I said quietly but firmly, can we talk in private? Dad, you too. Something in my tone must have registered, because both followed me to a quiet spot near the terrace. Grace, noticing, joined seconds later. Is something wrong? She asked, looking between us. They're about to cut the cake. Everything's fine, I said calmly. I just need a moment with all of you. I took a steady breath. For 5 years, we've barely spoken. You ignored my calls. Never once acknowledged my work. Today, I was seated at the farthest table, excluded from family photos, and not even mentioned in the wedding program. My mother opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. Please, let me finish. I understand now. I don't fit the version of family you've created. And that's fine. But what's not fine is acting like I suddenly matter because someone important recognized my name. That isn't support. That's opportunism. That's not fair, my father said. We've always supported you. When? I asked. When have you supported anything about my life, my choices, my work, in a real and meaningful way? We've been worried about you, my mother replied, falling into her usual defensive rhythm. No husband, no children, always working. That's not healthy. That's not concern, Mom. That's judgment. And there's a difference. Grace looked uncomfortable. Can we not do this today? It's my wedding. That's exactly why I'm doing this now, I said. I'm happy for you, truly. But I won't pretend anymore that we're a close-knit family. I'm done performing for approval that's never coming, my father frowned. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'm going to leave quietly. I'll send a gift to celebrate your marriage, Grace. I wish you both well, but I can't. Keep pretending that any of this works. I want relationships based on real connection, not usefulness. And I deserve that, even from family. You're just going to walk out? My mother said, her voice rising. You'll make a scene. No, I won't. I'll just say my goodbyes. Most people won't even notice I'm gone, just like they didn't notice where I was seated or that I wasn't in the family photos. For the first time that weekend, Grace's expression shifted, genuine emotion, a mix of guilt and clarity. Elena, I didn't mean to. I know, I said gently. None of you did. That's the problem. It's so automatic, none of you even thought about it. I straightened, feeling the weight lift. I've built a life I love. I'm surrounded by people who respect and value me for me. And if my family, Can't do that, I need to stop hoping they ever will. Just then the DJ's voice came over the speakers, announcing the cake cutting, the perfect signal to end the conversation. Guests began moving toward the dance floor. I stepped out onto the terrace for a final moment alone. To my surprise, Brandon joined me. "Everything okay?" he asked. "You looked intense back there." "Just clearing the air," I said. Successful company. I'd built a community. A chosen family bound not by obligation or blood, but by mutual respect, shared vision and care that required no proof of usefulness. As the night wore on, wine flowed, and someone pulled out a guitar. Rachel sang a ridiculous improvised ballad about Table 19 exile, and the room erupted with laughter. No one asked what I could offer. No one tried to introduce me to their cousin's hedge fund manager. I was simply Elena, friend, leader, peer. Later, as I stood on Samantha's balcony looking out at the glittering cityscape, she joined me, 2 mugs of tea in hand. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "More than okay." "Feels like something changed." "It did," I said. I stopped asking for a seat at a table that was never set for me, and I realized I already have a table. Right here. She clinked her mug against mine. "And you're always welcome at it." That night I went home feeling something unfamiliar, yet unmistakable. Peace. Not the absence of pain, but the acceptance of it. I couldn't rewrite the past, but I could choose how the next chapters were written, and who got to be in them. In the weeks that followed, my family's outreach slowed. The silence that once would have haunted me now felt like space, room to grow, room to breathe. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't chasing belonging. I was living it. Refinement options, let me know which you'd like. Polished final draft, ready for blog publication, cleaned up grammar and punctuation section, breaks for readability, minor style edits while preserving your voice, break into blog newsletter. Series, divided into 3 to 5 parts with teaser endings, SEO-friendly titles due to subtitles, suggested posting schedule for consistency, turn into a spoken word, TEDx-style script. Optimized for live delivery emphasis and pacing cues, emotional arc preserved, convert to short story or narrative essay for submission, literary polish, compliant with typical word count, tout 2,500, 3,000 words, includes title, synopsis and publication suggestions, closing reflection you've written not just a story, but a mirror, one many people will see themselves in. The last paragraph especially, sometimes the greatest act of love is releasing expectations of those who cannot meet them, where I finally understood that taking my rightful seat at the table began with believing I deserved to be there. That is universal, evergreen, and deeply moving